right? Where a being is just as smart or sentient as a human, but not human.
Yeah. Basically, we transfer the consciousness of a human being into a non-human form. Like it's like, so just the brain of a human or something. We transfer it into a non-human form. Is it now okay to kill that being? So like maybe it's like we were talking about earlier. Like the human now has a tail. It's not a chimp. It's still a human. Has a tail though, but it's now technically not a human either because it has a tail. Now, is it okay to farm those humans and eat them for food?
I would say no, right? Because they still have the capabilities of humans, right?
Right. So wait, so you would not be in favor of eating those beings?
No, I would not be.
Okay, so wouldn't that expose a contradiction in your moral system then?
How so?
Because you're not comfortable with killing those beings that are not human, but they have human qualities or human consciousness. But earlier you said, well, that was the whole question I was posing you, right? Like we started off with farming human beings, right? And then you said, oh no, they're still humans, right? I was like mentally retarded beings, right? And you're like, oh, they're still humans, right? So I said, okay, well, what if we just transfer the consciousness into a non-human form? So now, basically, what we're taking off the table is it's not human. It's not just being human what you're morally concerned about, because I just demonstrated a case where we put the human consciousness into a being that's not technically human, but you still wouldn't want to kill that being. So now we had to take that off the table, basically. That human itself is not the thing that you're most interested in.
That humans, it's
that the trait of being human is not what you're most interested in the reason why we can't farm human beings to feed other humans.
But it is, because I mean those beings aren't humans anymore.
Right. They're not human, right? But they have human consciousness, and you said you wouldn't be okay with that. So it's not, basically what I'm getting at is it's not the chromosome or the DNA that we have that makes us human particularly. I'm saying, like, because in this case we're transferring human consciousness into a being that's not technically human, but you're not okay with killing it. So that means basically that it's not just a human being that you're not okay with killing. You're not okay with killing a being that has the consciousness of a human being.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll concede that point.
Yeah. Okay. And so you're okay. So let me try to tie this back. So okay. Yeah. So there you go. So basically, it doesn't have to be a human, right? And for you not to want to kill it. But then I also demonstrated the case where even if it were, how do I tie this together? Because so basically back to the animals, they're not humans, and some of them have cognition capabilities better than mentally retarded, mentally handicapped humans. So basically you haven't brought an argument to the table then now of why it's okay to farm animals.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, yeah, it does. Yeah. Well, let me pose it to you this way.
All right.
Why? Okay. Okay. So, I guess I will kind of back up, and this might not be from a strict ethical perspective.
All right.
Right. But let's think of this historically, right?
Sure.
And I actually love the fact that you brought up the dog example, because it brings up something very interesting. Why don't we farm dogs? like pigs are smarter. Like we should have them as pets. Why, why don't we farm dogs instead? Or like
Yeah. So
what's the what's the sentient value that we put into certain animals and not others? Or like what's the value?
well that's basically the whole point of veganism. It's exposing inconsistencies in people's moral framework by placing more moral value on a dog. So like now we're getting you to understand that, okay, a dog is more intelligent than a dog, or sorry, a pig is more intelligent than a dog, so maybe we should farm dogs. The reason why I would say why we shouldn't farm dogs is the same reason why I say we shouldn't farm pigs, because they are both sentient and have the ability to experience pain and suffering. So we shouldn't put any sentient being in a position where they can any being that possesses sentience that can feel pain and suffering should not be in that situation if it can be avoided altogether. And we know now with the current science that it can be avoided because we can sustain ourselves fully on plants. So that's the argument for not farming dogs.
Okay. Okay. So I guess you bring up two interesting things, and I'll like discuss them both in the order that you brought them up in, I guess. Well, historically, like I was asking more from a historical perspective as well as an ethical perspective. Like,
okay.
I'm more curious historically. I don't know the answer. I'm kind of posing it to you, and I can look it up as well. Historically, why did we farm chickens, cows, pigs, goats, lamb, and instead of farming other animals? Like, there has to be a reason, right? Like, why don't we have cheetah farms? Or like, why don't we
no, I can answer that.
Farms,
I think I can answer that, actually. I mean, like, dogs, I think they evolutionarily helped us back in the day, right? They helped us hunt, and that's how we formed the bonds we have with dogs. So they provided an evolutionary benefit to furthering both of our races together. And then, yeah, I think in terms of like the animals that we do farm, I don't know. I think it's just kind of coincidence almost. Like, I mean, not coincidence, but like, I honestly I don't really know. I don't have a really good answer for that.
Yeah, like that kind of that thought just kind of popped up into my head while we were talking. Like I'm just kind of curious about that. Like why, how did we choose our farm animals? And I'd honestly say that it's something to do with like the Fertile Crescent almost, just the animals available at the time. Like just going way back in history.
Yeah, I mean. That's something I would definitely want to look into more and see why.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some good documentation on it.
Yeah. Now the other point. Okay. Shit. And I'm sorry. We got off onto that tangent, but the other point we were talking about was dogs versus pigs, farm animals. Okay. Yeah. Now I think that. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, your last point. So let's say I concede that eating sentient beings is wrong. Eating fish, dogs, cows, pigs, everything. I agree with you now. It's incorrect. It's unethical to do so.
Okay.
Now, there still is the question of implementation of the lifestyle, though.
Okay.
Now,
yeah, certainly.
And by that regard, I don't mean me personally. I mean in mass.
Yeah, like, society-wise. Yeah.
Yeah, society, and I think veganism, while a good movement as is, a good movement, isn't ever going to be effective as a grassroots movement. In regards to like personal people, you and I talking, you convincing me to be vegan, and then me going and convincing 10 other people to be vegan. I don't think that's ever going to be an effective strategy, or if it will be, it's going to be a very slow strategy.
Yeah.
Maybe taking a couple hundred years to even make a dent.
Yeah. So you're saying that the approach of how to get to point A to point B, like from farming animals to farming plants most only, is
unclear.
Yeah. So there was a good argument, and I'm trying to remember why it came down to personal, like down to a personal level and not like a governmental level. Like obviously the government plays a huge role in like deciding that, but I forgot what the argument was. I need to like look into that again. But I think it was something along the lines of like you're not going to convince even if you mandate like against eating meat, there's still going to be people that eat meat. And so it's kind of like you have to convince them on a personal level before they're actually willing to start partaking in that action. Otherwise, they might like revolt or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you kind of have to approach it on both. You have to take both approaches. One like on a we need to make change like governmentally, but we also have to make change like individually because I guess it's the parallel is like the Civil War, right? Like there was
yeah, it is actually.
Yeah, so that's basically what it is. Where people had a disagreement in what the moral situation should be, and they went to war for it, right? Obviously, hopefully, we don't go to war for fucking veganism over eating meat, but the idea is to be able to convince enough people, and then also make systemic change on like, and then this gets into like all the other aspects of veganism, not just the moral stuff, where it's like the environmental impacts and the potential pandemic risk, right? Well, I'll concede that, yeah, like you made a point, like, okay, yeah, people roll the dice, and like a pandemic doesn't happen every time you eat a chicken, right? But there's enough, I guess, data and evidence to suggest that it could happen every 5, 10, 15 years, right? So at what point do we draw the line, right? It's like...
Yeah. And well, this is getting off topic again, and I dislike it that I do this, but I always think of something when you're speaking. I think of like 4 things that I want to say,
it's
and
all
I'm
good.
like, okay, I shouldn't interrupt. But yeah. So one of the things is that not all okay. But I mean, obviously, not everyone is ethical. Like we all want to be, but not everyone is ethical.
Yes.
And I would say that people in power are even less ethical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so that makes any sort of movement, I don't want to call it movement, but any sort of agenda harder to push on.
Yeah, okay. So you're kind of you're not talking about it from like a practical point of view of how you get a society to shift over to veganism.
Yeah, and because personally, I have tried a Beyond Patty at Dunkin' Donuts. Could not taste the difference. It is amazing. Yes, I totally done it, and personally, I agree with you that that red meat, especially red meat, from cows and pigs, does cause a lot more diseases, like heart disease. I don't want to go into cancer, but there have been some studies linking burnt meat to cancer.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it's not just that, man. I'll send you a paper after if you're interested. But the Academy of Dietetics and Nutrition, so like the largest group of certified nutritionists in America, they recently came out with a study that said vegan diets are perfectly adequate for all stages of life, so including like pregnancy, childhood, adulthood, and even for athletes. And then they even went further and said vegans are at a reduced risk for developing certain heart diseases and also certain types of cancers. So they actually went as far as saying even cancers.
Yeah, and I 100% believe you on that. Yeah, like the less meat one eats, the more healthy they are usually. I would say that to get protein, I still do eat chicken and ground turkey a lot.
Right.
Ground turkey, I probably should just buy turkey and ground it myself. But yeah. But yeah, that's just because it's high protein.
Sure.
Yeah, and chickpea protein, peanut butter, they're fine, but I don't think the same quality of protein is there. And if it is, you're having to eat insane amounts of it to get the same amount of protein as well. And so to get everyone on that diet, I'm not sure is economically or logistically feasible.
I would definitely disagree. Yes, you have to eat more volume wise, because meat is highly calorically dense. But if you're eating the same amount of calories, then you're eating the same amount of calories, right? So on a volume wise, yes, you're right. But on a calorie basis, they're identical, right?
Yes. Well, I'm talking more. Well, I'm not talking about calorically. I'm talking about protein, grams of protein per pound.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, first off, I think you're probably overvaluing protein, which our society really does tremendously. And then two, yeah. So like, if you're just concerned about getting your basically your recommended daily value of protein, you're not like a bodybuilder or something. Then that's perfectly easy, right? Like that's literally every plant you eat has protein. So as long as you're getting the recommended as long as you're getting your calorie, the right calorie input, you're granted you're going to be getting enough protein. Now, if you're like a body weight builder, or you're like a bodybuilder, and you want to build muscle, then your obviously protein becomes more important. And that's where you make decisions based on what kind of foods you're eating. So like me personally, when I'm lifting, I'll try to eat more lentils, more tofu, more tempeh. Drinking the protein shakes between workouts and stuff. But eating just those sources, more beans, right? You mentioned chickpeas are good, and then yeah, so it's actually perfectly easy to get your protein levels, depending on how much you need. It's completely possible, right?
Yeah, but wouldn't you agree that it's? I mean, I think you just said that you have to consume more to get to that same point, right? Like the volume.
No. Like, because if you look at like bodybuilders, like they'll eat like a whole chicken a day, basically, right? Like they'll eat, right? Like, so it's like, okay, like how are you going to compare eating a whole chicken a day to eating like the equivalent amount, or not even? You wouldn't have to eat the equivalent amount in lentils per se. Like, basically, you just like you don't need to eat like the crazy amounts that you're thinking. Yes, like the insane bodybuilders. I mean, like I can send you links to guys like vegan bodybuilders, and you can see what they eat, and it's like,
oh yeah. I've definitely seen those. I actually I actually have seen those. There's a really famous one actually. Oh shit, what's his name? Like he's God damn it, I think he actually resides in LA. Shit, what's his name? He was actually mentioned. I'm not sure if you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, he was mentioned on there, but I forget his name.
Was it Patrick? Patrick Baboumian doesn't live in LA, so it couldn't have been him.
Yeah, I honestly, like, they pulled up a picture of him, but that's the only way I would recognize him at this point. But yeah, I do know that there are vegan bodybuilders out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure. Well, like, because like the supplements that they take, because they definitely do take supplements though, and those supplements are animal based though. So so it doesn't really correlate because they're still consuming animal products at that point.
No, they're definitely not if they're vegan, right? Like they're.
That's the claim. Like that's his whole like kind of.
There's no way you're going into the realm of that these vegans aren't vegans, are you?
No.
Because
yeah.
There's plenty of there's plenty of vegan bodybuilders that you can just tell they're just not eating because they're advocating on a moral standpoint. Like, why would you be advocating on a moral standpoint and then still be consuming animals? You know what I mean? It just wouldn't add up. And there's one guy I follow. It might have been Nimai Delgado. Was that who it was?
Nimai Delgado. That might have been. Hold on a second. I'm going to put you on speaker, and I'm just going to look this up real quick.
Okay.
Did you mind?
Yeah, he was born vegetarian, and he became vegan at like 10 or 11 or something. So like the guy's literally never eaten meat in his life, and he's just like fucking ripped.
It wasn't Delgado. What was the other name that you mentioned?
Patrick Baboumian. Baboumian, Babo, something like that.
Yeah, it was Patrick Baboumian, yeah.
Yeah, that guy doesn't live in LA. I think he lives in Germany or something. Or maybe he does live in LA. I don't know. I don't think he does.
Yeah, no, it says he's an Iranian-born German Armenian. Wow, holy shit. He's Iranian-born German Armenian. Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, so perfect for LA, right? But no, yeah, yeah. Well, that's who they were talking about on the podcast, and yeah, I'm not sure. Like, yeah. So I don't. Let me pose it to you this way, then. I bought into the ethics, as we discussed, like of the human-like creatures and not farming them. So sure, and I've gotten the part of, okay, you can be a bodybuilder and still eat all of this material, but is it mathematically possible to do it? Is my question now.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you already know where I'm going with it, but like, can you convert all the farmland that you have for grazing cattle, all of like the chicken coops that you have right now, convert them into farmland for, I don't know, what's the highest protein or highest nutrient food that you can eat?
Probably
chickpea protein.
Probably soy or lentils.
Soy or lentils.
Yeah.
Get one of those and just plant that everywhere. Don't plant that and kale or corn everywhere.
Well, okay. First off, thankfully we don't have to eat just those things. Like I said, like I think our society overvalues protein to like this insane level where, like I mentioned before, like even if you're just eating like whatever, every plant has some level of protein. So like, unless you're just not getting enough calories, you're gonna meet your protein level. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to just like farm only highly protein dense foods. Is number one, and then number two, basically, yes, that is completely perfectly possible, and basically, it's gonna become a requirement at some point because right now, the way we're eating is just completely unsustainable. The way we're farming animals is completely unsustainable. The land that they take up and the land that is used to grow the crops that feed these animals is just, I mean, it's well documented. It's getting to unsustainable levels. We're cutting down. I mean, the Amazon fires that happened earlier was it this year? No.
It was either early this year or last year, but yeah. I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, those fires, right, to cut down space for cattle. It's just like we're really depleting our environmental budget, by farming animals. So so it's almost like where it's going to become to the point where it's a moral argument for just human race continuation. Obviously, it's not there yet, but presumably it will get there at some point because of the unsustainability of eating animals.
Interesting. Well, I guess my not my counter, but just I guess a question I guess is I would be curious to see the data if it was available where we're farming cattle. I don't want to just talk about the U.S. because there's a massive supply chain all around the world.
Yeah.
So I guess globally, I would want to know like how much meat has been produced per year, and if that has gone up or gone down or stayed consistent over time.
Oh, I'm sure it's gone up because the population has gone up. My point is, we're cutting down land that we. I mean, basically, all you have to know is the amount of calories you get from an animal versus if you were to just eat those calories directly from plants is it's like 1 to 10 or something like that. I don't know the exact number, but it's like basically. Yeah. There's like a research I recently posted on my stories is like we could feed currently like 9 billion people or we could feed an extra 4 billion people if we use the land we have right now only for growing crops instead of growing crops to feed animals.
Interesting. I'll take a look at that.
Yeah. So there's definitely more studies coming out on the side of like how many people could we feed if we were just eating plant-based. But then there's also well-documented stuff about the environment, and like I'm sure you're aware, like cattle is like the worst in terms of the environment, right?
Yeah. I actually let me put you on speaker again. I'm watching. There's this Netflix show called Ugly Delicious. It's about basically about a. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. Have you?
No, I haven't.
It's basically a cooking show where this restaurateur goes around and discusses one topic, and the topic for this particular episode was beef steak.
Okay.
And one of the things that caught my eye was this farm in Spain. It was called Bodega El Capriocho.
Okay.
Yeah. And that farm is actually the carbon positive, meaning that the way that they farm their cattle, they make up for other cattle farmer pollution, other methane pollutants.
Yeah. I've heard about that. I need to do more research on that. What my suspicion is that one, it's probably not a factory farm. It's probably just like a local free range farm or something.
Yeah. It definitely is a free range farm. It's not a factory farm, so I will concede that point. And the other point is that the cows also live maybe twice as long. So the average factory farm is, I believe it was like 14 to 18 months. But their farm does it from I think 28 to 32 months or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, so that might be great for them, but the problem is in America, 99% of food comes from meat comes from factory farms. And then it's like something like 90 to 95% globally comes from factory farms. So those local farms are great and all, but they're not what's feeding the masses.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so interesting. And so your perspective on not eating meat is rooted in the ethics. So for example, if we went if we went to the perfect perfect utopia, near perfect, and say we eliminated all factory farms, and there were only free range farms left, you would still think that the free range farms are kind of the next item on the chopping block.
Yeah, definitely. yeah, while they're better, in terms of the environment, like you pointed out, and the ethics, they're still, in my opinion, unethical because I wouldn't raise a dog and treat it very well only to cut its head off and eat its leg. You know what I mean? So so the ethics still play a role even in local free range farms.
Interesting. Hmm. Oh yeah. Honestly, I was just curious about your perspective on that. But yeah, cool, interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, man. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a little frustrating, I guess, for me because I've been so ingrained in all the research for like the past 3 years that it seems like an obvious choice to me. But I guess it's still a matter of like a lot of people don't know like the full details and stuff. So that's all I'm trying to do with my Facebook post is just kind of spread awareness. Um,
Yeah,
and,
yeah, and I think it's a little bit more difficult. I mean, like, yeah, I hate those. I'm sorry you have to deal with people. I hope I'm a little bit more intelligent. I hope my comments are a little bit more intelligent than the people that just say no bacon
yeah,
and then
yeah,
just
yeah.
like roar at the keyboard. I hope I'm a little bit more intelligent, not by much, but hopefully a bit.
No, dude,
Um,
definitely a lot more intelligent. I mean, yeah, we just had a very intelligent, like, calm conversation, whereas like any conversation with them would probably end in like just like yelling.
Yeah, no, but yeah, like, I guess, well, like, once you went vegan, I'm kind of curious. It's like personally, not ethics or anything. I'm kind of curious,
Yeah.
like, what health benefits or like health changes did you see in yourself?
So not a whole lot to be honest. Like when I first switched over, I didn't really notice a whole lot. Some people do. Like if you're, I think Joe Rogan even pointed this out at one point.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, obviously, if you're eating McDonald's every day and then you switch over to fucking eating plants, like, then you gotta feel great. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're already eating like pretty healthy, only mostly chicken stuff like that, you're probably not gonna notice a huge difference. Um, but I think in terms of like endurance and stuff like that, like in like outside sports,
Mm-hmm.
I found small benefits there. And just from like
Interesting.
from another thing, like another point is I actually when I first went vegan, I actually gained weight, contrary to what most people think. But I was intentionally trying to, I was like, okay, I'm gonna work out and gain muscle, and I ended up gaining like 15 pounds or something.
Oh wow, good,
Um,
congrats.
yeah, yeah, thanks. So those would be the benefits. I'm trying to think if there's any other like health benefits that I've noticed, but
Well, like, I guess I'm curious. Did you feel like sluggishness or like, or like more energy?
well, no, I definitely didn't feel sluggishness, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was basically I felt not much better, but maybe slightly better than what I felt like when I was eating meat,
Interesting.
right?
Okay,
It
yeah,
just didn't feel
yeah.
like a major change at all.
Mhm. And so yeah, and so your perspective of making the change was more ethical, not health related.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, it was basically overnight switch for me.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, what prompted the switch?
Yeah, so I don't know. I watched some random YouTube video, and the guy randomly just said, well, he was like, it's bad karma to kill animals.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never thought about it that way. Basically, I basically never really thought about where the food I ate came from. Even though obviously I knew it was like animals and whatever. I never really looked into it and educated myself fully. So when he pointed that out, and my sister was already vegan, it was like literally the next day was her birthday. So I was like, oh, I'll go vegan for her birthday, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I ended up just like doing a bunch of research into it at that time, and then I learned that you could be perfectly healthy eating plants, and And then I learned about the ethics. I watched a shit ton of slaughterhouse videos to, really understand what goes on and not to make sure it's not just like isolated incidents. I was like concerned that maybe I was feeling empathy for these animals, but it doesn't happen that often. But then, it actually happens everywhere. It's all these factory farms, they end up in slaughterhouses. So yeah, saw the slaughterhouse footage, and then basically got more background into the moral arguments, and like trying to like basically watch. I actually ended up watching a channel where the guy just like literally just debates other people, and
yeah, I think I think I know what channel you're talking about. He just carries around like a microphone and like speaks at like a table sometimes.
Earthling Ed.
Yeah, Earthling Ed.
Yeah. Some of his stuff, but actually, this other guy who's posted on some of my Facebook comments or posts, the Ask Yourself, or his name is Isaac Brown on Facebook, but he has a YouTube channel called Ask Yourself. And he's the one who I watched more of his debates, and he's actually where I got the whole like transfer your human consciousness into like another being. So he's kind of like, as I see it, like one of the he's like on the forefront of coming out with moral arguments and defending veganism from a moral standpoint.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I will say this. You've somewhat convinced me. Like I'll go ahead and say that like I'm like 84% there.
Yeah.
85% there.
Sure, man.
Yeah. But I can't honestly say that I've been vegan today. I just had buffalo chicken dip, so I mean.
Right. Yeah, I mean.
But yeah.
What you could do is try to. I mean, I know you said that some of the vegan meats are more expensive. I mean, I honestly haven't done a cost comparison for all of them, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure maybe, the meat is probably less expensive, but meat is still, in general, expensive.
Yeah.
But then the vegan alternatives, I would say, are comparable, maybe slightly more. But if you look for Gardein, like, they have some really good chicken stuff. It's usually found in, like, the frozen section of the supermarkets. So I would just, like, just try swapping at like whatever chicken you had today with those, and then. But now, like the diet that I really eat is just mostly whole food, so I don't really mess with the alternatives so much. One, because here there isn't as many available in Peru, and then two, it's just like I don't really see, like, while those are, I would say, are more healthy than the meat alternative, I don't view them as a health food. So I view them more as like a luxury. If I'm gonna go out and like eat with some friends, like then I'm gonna eat the Beyond Burger or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm not eating these things for good health, basically.
Okay, yeah. Out of curiosity, what do you mean by whole foods? Like it's like an apple, or like what do you mean by whole foods?
Yeah, literally, like basically something that's minimally processed. So yeah, basically potatoes, like all your vegetables, fruits, grains, but like instead of like white rice, like you would do brown rice because it's less processed. And then basically foods that are just whole. So like there's not a bunch of ingredients into one item. So it's basically just minimally processed.
Okay, yeah. Like personally, my diet, I haven't, like, for the past 4, maybe 5 years, I haven't been eating much rice. I do like bread sometimes, but like rice and most grains I try to avoid anyways. I don't know, they just make me feel pretty bad. So yeah, I just avoid those. Fruits and vegetables, I'll agree with you on. Yeah, just to kind of supplement the fruits and vegetables, like I have chicken and turkey. Right. So like one of my favorite foods is ground turkey with the potatoes. And I just mix some Pakistani spices in there, and it's pretty good.
Right.
But yeah, that's usually my go-to meal.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You could do. I mean, there's ground beef, vegan ground beef, and I don't know what grocery stores you have, but Trader Joe's here in Cali has some pretty good vegan ground beef, so you could maybe use that instead. But you can look into alternatives yourself, of course. But if you were
Mhm.
interested, but yeah, I mean, my research on a health wise, it's just yeah, it seems like all the doctors are not all the doctors, but obviously the I guess the vegan doctors, but they're not even some of them are don't even subscribe to like the moral viewpoint of it all. They're just literally pushing whole foods plant based diet as like because the scientific evidence is what's saying that's the most optimal. Um, so that's kind of just what I stick to.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Hmm. Excuse me. But yeah. Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah, man.
Well, yeah, Alex. Yeah. I don't want to take up too much of your evening.
Yeah, no worries, man. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you calling and talking through with it, talking me through it. It was good to hear your side. Because I don't normally debate people with like your level of like argumentation. It's mostly just like, oh no, fucking plants aren't sentient. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and yeah, I'll look into that. If you could send me any papers, that would be helpful as well.
all right, man. Yeah, I'll send you some resources I got.
Sure, sure.
All right, man.
Yeah, let me know how your business goes, and if you decide to do anything else. Yeah, it was good. Well, let's keep in touch more.
Yeah, man. Maybe we can work together, collaborate, or something in the future.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because your background's in mechanical, right?
Uh, aerospace.
Aerospace, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Copy. All right, man. Well, good talking to you, and we'll be in
All right.
touch. All right.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, you
Bye.
too, man. Later.